Hello and welcome back to our tutorial. Um, what we're doing now is we're going to have a look at our skeleton and we're going to make it articulate and get it to work. So there's a few little kind of amendments to make before I get started. I'm going to turn on names, and there's a few little errors and a few little things I've made I also want to work on. So this says bone 12 and bone 13. So I've actually two extra bones. So some of you have pressed E before extrude when using geometry and created overlapping geometry. So I kind of did the same there. I've created more bones than I needed. I've put in these two guide bones. There are different ways to constrain the bones. We'll see that in a minute. And this uses a slightly different method. So I'm just going to delete them. I won't actually need them in the end. And then finally what I want to do is I want to create two new bones. So I'm going to go E, X, I'm going to extrude this on X, and I'm going to call this hand ik.l. I'm going to do the same over here, E on X, and it doesn't matter if they're the same size or not the same size. And I'm going to call this hand ik.or. Now, what are we going to do here? We are going to explore bone constraints. So let's have a look at this. I'm going to hit T for tools, and I'm going to go into this thing here called Auto IK. Now, IK stands for Inverse Kinematics, which is a very fancy name. Inverse kinematics. Kinematics just means movement, and this is inverse movement. And what it means by that is instead of the movement being generated here at the core of the object, if I grab the very end of a chain, I can have the whole chain follow the movement of this one bone at the end of the link. So if I turn that off and I go G, I'm only moving one bone. Oh, let me start this display, so G. But if I turn this on, I go G, I can move the whole rig. So and this is an important kind of set of tools. If you are posing a rig and it goes into a pose you don't like, just select all the bones and go Alt or Alt G, and that's reset rotation, reset location. So I've reset it the way I want it to be. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add some constraints. Now, what is a constraint? Well, IK is a constraint. As it's set up at the moment with IK, it says Auto IK. We have no refinement here. So if I go G, I can't control this arm separate to this one. So that's not ideal. So I'm going to turn this off, and we're going to add constraints that allow us to control the bones in a very specific manner. So if I didn't want it to rotate too far, or in an unnatural way, then I can add constraints to stop a bone rotating beyond a certain number of degrees, etc. So I'm going to start with an easy one. I'm going to start with the eyes. So what I'm going to do with the eyes is I'm going to say track to. And I'm going to track it to the troll rig, which is the name of this entire object. And then the particular bone I'm looking for is called look, which is this bone here. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to go track to troll rig, and then the look bone. And now when I move this G, those two bones point at this one. They're tracking this bone. That's fantastic. Now we are kind of fortunate the way this rig is set up. It's pointing positively on Y. So we could be tracking negatively or sideways, but we're just kind of fortunate that it's kind of out of the box. It worked for us. But it's quite a powerful tool to get one bone to constantly look at another. If you were making a robot and it had sort of pneumatic pumps between forearm and arm, this is the sort of system that you would use to make sure that they always intersected each other. This is quite a powerful little tool. So now after that, what I want is I want to be able to grab this bone here and go G and move the whole arm, but just up to the shoulder, not the rest of the rig. So how do I do that? Well, I select my forearm and I go inverse kinematics. So I want to create this kind of chain effect from the troll rig. And what bone do I want? Well, the bone I want is my hand. I've just made it. Hand ik.l. And then there's now a dotted line, a yellow dotted line to this point here. So if I move this, the whole chain will move back here, and I don't want that. I only want it to go as far as the shoulder. So I'm just going to put in a length of 2. So now when I move this, the arm will move. In reality, when I move this, that's not what's going to happen. So when I go G, nothing happens. And why is that? And one of the things you have to be very careful of when you're rigging is what I'm about to explain now, which is the idea or the notion of a loop. This object here, I've told it to follow this object. So this one is following this one. But this, as a consequence of our construction, is a child of this. So this is following this while this is following this. So it's like a circular following each other loop. So basically things don't move, or if they do move, they'll move in a very unpredictable way. So I need to go back to edit mode, and with this bone here I need to go to its individual bone settings, and I need to look down here and say it says its parent is the forearm. So I need to delete that. So this object now has no parent. When I go back to pose mode, when I go G, now I can move the arm. Fantastic. Now there's still kind of a problem here. If I take this and I go G, no, that's not, okay. What I want to happen is I want to move, when I go G, move this down, and the whole torso will come with me. So again, let's go back to edit mode, select this guy here, and in his bone setting, he has no parent. So let's parent him to the bend bone, which is this bone here. I also want these two to be the child of the bend bone. So when the torso comes down, these bones go down too. So I'll make these childs of bend. There we go. So now let's go back to pose mode and select this bone and go G. And down we go. Happy days. Now there's a problem. You can see the problem with the hand. The hand is sort of anchored to this point. I've told this one to follow this one. So even though the skeleton's moving, he's sort of anchored here. So the way to fix that is in edit mode, make this guy has no parent at the moment, make him a child of bend. So now, when I go back into pose mode and I move this, everything moves together. So I'm going to very quickly do to this arm what I've done to this arm. So this one here, go in edit mode, I'm going to delete its parent, and then make it the parent of the bend bone. And you can see the relationships between the bones. They're kind of displayed as dotted lines. Not to be confused with the dotted line that comes out of the lice, which is a little confusing. But in between the bones that have a relationship, children of each other, that are separated, they have a dotted line. So we go back into pose mode, select this guy here, go to my constraints, add an inverse kinematic constraint. It's the troll rig that we're dealing with, which is the name of the whole skeleton. The bone I'm looking for is handik.or, and then the chain length is 2. So now I can go G, and just articulate this arm, and when I articulate the rig, it all moves down. Happy days. Eyes are done, arms are done. All we've left to do are the feet, and the feet are the most complicated. The feet we're going to, like the setup we're going to have, is actually quite simple. Compared to how this can get, you can have really complex rigs. Like I can have a single bone that if I scale it, for example, it'll make the hand grind a fist or move into a particular pose. So you can have quite complex rigs. Also, if you're making kind of cartoony characters, if you think of like, what are they called? I can't remember them. I think of a cartoon character, but like that could stretch. You might want all sorts of interesting stretch, like scaling constraints, etc., so that the bones will stretch and they'll stretch the mesh, etc. So you can get quite complicated setups. And later, after Christmas, we'll be looking at a tool called Rigify, which has a very complex rig. But for now, let's work on this this leg here. Now, I want to be able to move this and have this move the leg. So this will be visible underneath the foot. So the base of the foot will finish here where my mouse is. So I'll be able to see this bone. I want to be able to grab it, go G, and lift the whole leg. So I want sort of something like this. So I can lift the whole arm, I can lift the whole leg. So let's do that. Let's add a constraint, an inverse kinematic constraint, to the troll rig. And I want it to go to this foot IK here. Excuse me. and it's foot IK dot L. Oh dear. Now, I have to set my chain length again. So chain length of 2. Now I have a similar problem. So this IK bone, if I go into edit mode, is the child of the shin. So again, this loop I need to break. So do not want that to be the child of the shin. This bone here, I don't want this to have a parent either. I don't want this to follow the leg. I want it to lead the leg. So I'm going to delete its parentage. And this bone here, I don't want it to be the child of the shin. I don't want it to move up with the shin. I want it to follow this bone here. So I'm going to delete its parentage. And now I'm going to add, in pose mode, a constraint to this. I'm going to say copy location. Copy the location of the foot control bone. And foot control dot L. Okay. So, oh no, actually no, I don't want to do that. What I want to do, sorry, I'm getting this all wrong. What I want to do is, so this bone is going to follow this one, and I want this bone to follow this one. So the foot is following the IK bone, so the whole leg moves together. So let's go and do that in pose mode. So apologies. Get myself confused. So I'm going to go copy location, troll rig, and the foot or the location I'm looking for is this. So foot IK dot L. Now it hasn't moved, even though it's going to copy the location of it, because the center of this bone here, the root of this bone and the root of this bone are in the same position. So is the root of the heel and the root and the tip of this bone. So they're all in the same location. So now, the only thing I've left to do is I want this bone to be the child of this bone, because I want it to follow it. So I'm going to create this relationship here. So I'm going to make this the child of, so this is called a foot control dot L. Now, let's go back to pose mode and see what we've got. So when I move this, it will move the foot, because the foot is the child of this bone. I've put a copy constraint on this to copy the movement of the IK bone. So let's just say G. And let's go G. Okay, so I've got a problem here with this bone. We'll try and fix that now. So if I go G, nothing happens. Select my IK bone G, and my leg is behaving the way it should. So this is my IK bone here, G. Okay, so all good. This master bone should be, the reason it's called master is because I want it to be the, so let me just delete, so it's, at the moment it's the child of the shin. So I'm going to delete that. I want this bone here, the bend bone, to be the child of the master bone. So when I move master, everything will move. So, master. Okay. So let's go to pose mode and see what sort of stuff is going on here. So I'm going to go G, and the things are starting to look up. Okay. So this isn't working, but I can lift my leg independently, and I can crouch. So I'm nearly there. So what's not happening here is my foot is not copying the location of my foot IK. So this foot.L is not copying the location of my foot IK bone. Okay. So what we'll do is, so the easiest thing to do just for now, so I'm just going going to delete that, okay? Which seems like a radical solution, but it's going to work for us for now. I'm going to take this, I'm going to remove the copy location constraint, and I'm going to go back and make it a child in edit mode of the shin. So shin dot L. Okay. So let's just go back here. So I've got an articulate foot, and I've got this delightful thing here. So I'll add in this bone in later, and we'll see it work. So rather than just get too funky with it now, so I'm just going to delete that. But I will add it in the next video. So what we have then is I have to copy this over here, like these settings onto this side. I've got basically a working rig. Now this foot is a problem, and like I said, I will add in a solution to that. But basically, I can get the model to squat down, and I can get the arms to lift, and I can get the eyes to track. So these are huge steps forward in our setup. So let's have a look at our foot and copy what we have from here to here. So we're going to edit mode. So this has the parent of the shin, so we need to delete that. This still has a parent of a shin, as does this, which is what we have over here, so all good. This one is, it says it's not connected, so that's interesting. So we will use the fact that it's not connected in a minute, so we'll disconnect this one. That means it can move independently of, or it can be at a distance, so we'll come back to that in our next tutorial. But we still need to set the IK constraint, so we'll go in here and go inverse kinematic, control rig. The bone is the foot IK dot or, and the chain length is 2. So move my leg independently, and I can squat. Now we can do things like I can say to this bone here, copy the rotation of the master bone. So now as I descend, the foot won't go into the ground. And then, but if I want to rotate this independently, I can't. So that's why we need that bone underneath. So we'll get to that a bit later. So I'll turn that off for now. Okay. So this is a really good starting point for our rig. So I'm going to kind of stop this at this point. We'll be able to make a really good walk cycle. Get the guy to walk. We'll have plenty of plenty of decent sort of action that this character can engage in, and have plenty, and this is the most important part, plenty of control. And what, as a rigger, which is what we're doing here, the ultimate thing you want to be able to do is whoever the animator is, now it could be you, but it could be somebody else, you want to give that animator as much flexibility and control over the character as possible, while making the controls really simple. So with this character here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 at the moment, major kind of control bones. Normally what you do is you'd hide all the rest, and then the animator would only come in and use those ones. You wouldn't even leave the bone there. You'd kind of use a mesh, or you'd make an easy kind of control point for someone to grab and move. So we will look at how to do that in the next tutorial. And that's it for now.